Welcome to the Single Dads Network and it's Single Dads Unplugged. This is season 5. I'm so excited to host one of my good friends and my colleagues and Scott Cervine. And good afternoon or good evening from South Africa and good morning on your side, Scott. How are you doing?
Good morning. Good morning. So glad to be here with you. I'm very
That's
excited
great.
about this
Thanks,
topic.
Scott. Absolutely. Finally, we get to talk to each
Yeah.
other after trying so many times. And I'm glad you were able to make time. Maybe, I understand that you're raising two boys, and you and I actually chatted while you were in South Africa during the Moms Rising launch. And then we spoke a little bit about this co-parenting business and your experience and your road and your story raising two boys. Maybe let's start there.
I,
What's your
I have
space now?
I
Carry
have
on,
one
please.
son,
Yeah.
one daughter. One son and one daughter. So my
One
son
son and
Ocean.
one daughter. Oh, that's great. That's great. Okay. Okay, great. Scott, co-parenting obviously can be a very, very stressful and can be a complex journey. How have you
Oh yeah.
navigated the challenges of co-parenting with your ex-partner raising a daughter and a son?
With
Maybe let's
great
start there.
care.
Okay.
You know, I was racing to get here for this recording, and I will go down this road I always go down every day. But today,
Okay.
construction, there's people in the way, there's a UPS truck, and I'm like, oh, I got to get back to this podcast. I find co-parenting is very, very similar. But for me, the
Yeah.
key is like when I drive a car in San Francisco, California, I don't think I've ever done it without going the wrong way down a one-way street at least
Wow.
once. So now whenever I
Really?
drive to San Francisco, I go, all right, look sharp, just be aware, don't be afraid, just be aware. And so I kind of
Yeah.
apply that to parenting now. Whenever I'm going to get into a conversation with my co-parent, I just go, okay, I'm driving into San Francisco, just look sharp, be sharp,
Wow.
be
Wow.
and just be cautious, it's a trick that I use just for myself.
I can imagine it takes a lot, and with your demanding work as a filmmaker and director, your career must be demanding a lot of your time. How do you create balance between that and the challenges and the demands of being a parent?
You don't. I mean, but I live in beautiful Santa Cruz, California, which some people think is the surfing capital of the world. I don't surf much myself, but when I watch those amazing men and women out there, I see them just rolling with the wave and balancing, and that's how I do it. Whenever I
Yeah.
get pockets of time to lean into my career, I do, and when I have pockets of time with the kids, I just lean into that. So I guess it comes down to being present wherever you are, and
Just
that
being
creates.
present.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned the word present because in the Single Dads Network, we talk a lot about how fathers should be present in their kids' life, whether they live with them full time or not. But
Yeah.
what are the routines or the rituals that you do with your kids just to create that bonding, especially when you've got time with them and they're not at school and they're at home? Are there specific things and activities that you perform with them just to create bonding?
There is, and I am probably the luckiest human on the planet because I had an extraordinary father, just a
Wow.
world class spiritual giant. He was my best friend in the world. And he used to always do this thing that I've gleaned from him now. He passed
Yeah,
about
yeah,
20 years ago, but I still speak to him every day in my imagination,
yeah,
you know.
yeah.
And he had a wonderful trait whenever I was excited about something, and I had a lot of passions growing up, he would just
Hmm.
lean to it with me. He would find
Wow.
his way in to have his own enthusiasm about whatever I was doing. And I think that was one of the greatest gifts he ever gave to me. As a younger man, I
Wow.
was a world class magician, and then I did film, and wherever
Yeah,
I
yeah,
was,
yeah. I saw that. Yeah, yeah.
he was right there. And so now I do that with my kids. And the beauty of it
Sure.
is it's real. Like right now, my son is into rock climbing, and he just can't get
Wow.
enough. So I'm right there and present for him because I want to. I remember that gift I got from my dad. So I think presence is the most important thing you can give to your kids. I'm sure you're way ahead of me on that.
Yes, absolutely. I'm glad you touched your upbringing as well, because we always say that sometimes the way we're brought up as dads, as sons, has a very big influence on how we raise our own kids. How much influence? I mean, you do say that he was present in your life, but what have you taken? What are the positive experiences you've taken from your experience and your time as a son with your dad that you are now inculcating in the way you're raising your own family?
Yeah, without a doubt, that's my strongest foundation as a parent is what I learned from my father. And I'll give you one really quick example. As a
Sure, go
young man,
ahead.
I was about 15, and I very much wanted to audition for something called the Magic Castle down in Hollywood, California. And we lived 6 hours away up in the mountains, in the Sierra Nevada mountains.
Serious? Okay.
Yeah, I couldn't drive because I was 15. So I go, Dad, I want to
Wow.
audition for the Magic Castle with my little magic act, and he goes, let's go. And we get in our little
Yeah.
Toyota at the time. We drive all the way down to the Magic Castle and I audition. There's 85 other people auditioning. And I'm like, well,
Yeah.
I got here. I auditioned. Whether I get in or not doesn't really matter. We get in our little car. My dad drives me all the way back home, 6.5 hours home. The second we
Yeah.
walk in the door, I kid you not, we get a call saying, hey, you not only got in, but there's a big audition the very next day for a show that can be very good for you. And I go to my
Yes.
dad and I go, I know we just got home from this 6 hour trip, but there's a big audition tomorrow. And without skipping a beat, this dude looks at me and goes, let's go. We
Wow.
get in the car and we
Wow.
drive all the way back down. And that moment
Wow.
is just one of many that I got as a gift from my father. And so I use
Mm.
that as my foundation. I use that as kind of a touchstone anywhere I
That's
can.
amazing. That's amazing.
I'm like, let's go. Let's see what we can do.
That's awesome, Scott, because I think those lessons are going to stay with you for the longest time. And I'm sure connection. In fact, I was talking with someone else on a different podcast around connection.
Mm.
Why is it important for dads to create those connections where kids can actually be able to open up and talk to us as parents in an open way without feeling judged, ridiculed, and those kinds of things? Are there nuggets or suggestions that you can maybe share for other dads listening out there?
Yeah, I think it's more than what it is, it's why it is. Like, I have this
Okay,
inclination, this intuition that one of the most challenging things for any of us, or I'll just speak for myself right now, is the
sure.
fear of being alone. That's a deep
Mm,
archetype fear in whatever form that takes. And I think as kids, you naturally have that fear from time to time. So anything you
yes,
can
yes,
make sure that the kids know that they're safe, even if they are alone, but especially when they're with me. I think that's a big,
yeah,
big gift to pass on. And so, yeah, just
yeah,
being present with them is the best gift to help them move out of that fear or move through it or embrace it, to feel that fear
yes.
first, organically move on. Yeah.
Yeah, I like that. Let's go back a little bit. This thing of co-parenting is quite complex, especially when both parents do not live with the kids. But
Yeah.
I have a question around maintaining stability and routine for your kids. How has your is there a written agreement? Is there a kind of co-parenting situation that you've discussed with the mother? And how does that work for you, especially when it comes to routine and spending time with the kids?
Yeah. Look, it's the toughest thing in the world to navigate that. And fortunately,
I
my
can
co
imagine.
Brooke is a very positive ex-wife to have. We
Sure.
went through hell, as many people do when we separated.
Mhm.
The
Yeah.
crucible that just brings up everything. I had to go
Mhm.
through my biggest fear, which I didn't even realize until we went through the separation, which was being alone,
Wow.
being
Wow.
left. So it forced me to
Wow.
walk through that fear and walk through it and go, hey, not only am I okay, I feel pretty good. And so it was very helpful to me at the time, even though I resisted it greatly. But yeah, so
Yeah.
of course, communication is key. But I have this little trick that I pulled from, you may have heard of this tool before, but it's called the most generous interpretation of any communication or the
Oh,
least generous interpretation. Have you heard that?
yeah. No,
No.
I have not. I have not.
Oh, great. I think I stole it from a gentleman here named Dan Harris, who I listen to all the time. He's
Wow.
extraordinary. 10% Happier podcast. It's great. But he talks about that
Wow.
a lot. So any interaction I have, I think of that phrase now that I heard from his show about, am I going to have the most generous interpretation of this communication or the least? And that may take on many different forms. Like, let's say my ex was to reach out to me with great anger, really,
Sure.
yeah, just theoretically,
Frustration.
that's ever happened, just theoretically. I would in that moment. And the choice is not just for her. It's for me too. It's that old thing you've heard where when someone makes you angry, there is a moment. There's a pause before
Wow.
you react. And you can choose
Mm.
in that pause how you want to react. And so I'm doing my darndest. And look, I'm not always successful, but
Yeah.
many of the time I am. I take the most generous interpretation of that communication, whatever it is. Even if it sounds like to me, Scott, you're a loser, it's a very negative. I'm not even saying he
Yeah.
said that. I mean, if it feels
Yeah.
like that to me, I have to go, all right,
Mm.
let's say she was communicating that. What must
Yeah.
she be going through to have those
Yeah.
feelings, indicate that? And so
Yeah.
it helps 10%, 20% be a little bit easier with that. So as much as
Yeah.
I can, the most generous interpretation of any communication. And as it goes both ways.
I like that because communication is something that we're punting in this network around dads creating that relationship, especially the emotional relationship with their kids. What do you keep instilling in your kids around giving them assurance that we're gonna be fine and we're navigating this together? Are there maybe stories that you can share with our audience around this is how I inspire, motivate these two little kids around the situation we're in that we're going to eventually be okay.
Yeah, boy, that's a great question. Great thought. I go back to another story about my father,
Yeah.
who evidently was one of the greatest fathers of all time. So I'm driving our big Jeep. We lived up in the mountains, access
Okay.
road, snow. And I'm driving this
Yeah.
four-wheel drive to get back to the house. And I come around the corner. I was probably gunning it a little too fast. The Jeep goes up and it's literally hanging off the edge of a mountain. I get out right away because I'm like, is it going to slip over? I walk
Yeah.
up to the house. And a true story. I go to my dad. I go, Dad, the Jeep is hanging off the side of the road. And he turns to me and he goes,
Wow.
how exciting. That's what he said to me. How exciting.
Exciting.
I was like, yeah, it's a little exciting. And so he gets something out there to haul the Jeep back up on the thing. And it's just that response. And man, I love
Wow.
that. And so I do that with my kids. And the other thing is, which I'm sure you're the master of this too, your kids do
Sure.
listen to you sometimes, but really they watch what you do. They watch
Yeah,
how
they
you live.
copy that.
They watch how you
Yeah.
respond to the waiter or the waitress, to the scientist. They watch and they take that in almost more than anything I could say to them. So I'm just cognizant of that.
Yeah, yeah. And you're also raising a boy, and I was giving a talk to about 75 boys in Benoni, east of Joburg, around discipline and values. Yes, all our kids need to watch us how we behave, and they tend to copy how we lead our lives. But
Yeah.
for those dads raising boys specifically, what kind of habits or what kind of discipline arrangements or ideas that you want to impart to a boy child, especially if he's going to grow up to be like you, like a young man eventually growing up to start a family of his own? Are there specific thoughts you want to share with our network?
Yeah. One of my touchstones is there's a book I have it here somewhere called Brain, The Male
Meal
Brain.
brain.
And
Okay.
Male, MALE brain.
Oh, okay.
Each chapter takes you through what's going on in the male brain, which is pretty exciting.
Okay.
Different stages. And there's one that's for teen brains. And so it's so great to see this studied work of what's going on up there. What kind
Yeah.
of chemistry,
Yeah.
what's the reaction. So I have that on one side. But then on the other side, I personally have this whole belief about, I guess you'd call it the human shadow. Like I made a film 10
Okay.
years ago called The Shadow Effect with
Okay.
Deepak Chopra and Mary Williamson, and they all talk about this aspect of ourselves that we all have, but that we claim that we don't have. We hide it,
Yeah.
and
Mm-hmm.
and I don't think of it as the negative parts, and nor does Debbie Ford, the author of this work. She says, the gold, the greatest things in your life, you will find in that shadow. But
Yeah,
we mistake it.
yeah,
It's what's wrong with us. It's things we shouldn't have, so we kind of squash them down. So I don't
yeah.
really talk about it in that language with my kids, but I do share it with them. Like if they get really angry or something, I go, damn straight. I'd be angry too.
Mm,
know,
mm,
and just
mm,
try
mm,
to feel that feeling before I try to solve it for them. That's been really
mm,
helpful to me. And
mm.
boys, dude, they got a lot inside of them. They have a lot of anger, so it's tricky. I'm
Yeah,
not saying it's easy, but as much as I can, I try to be in it with them and really empathize with it. And once again, take the most generous interpretation of whatever they give me first,
yeah,
and then
yeah. Yeah, we say a lot that in our network that also as parents we need to practice listening to our kids and listening to their emotions, the stuff they're going through, and keeping that door open so that we create an opportunity for them to come in and share with us. I want to touch on this topic around emotional well-being. Separation can be very tough to both yourself and your kids. What strategies have you found helpful to support their emotional well-being, especially during this transition? Are there specific ways of testing if they're handling the transition carefully, and then how they're experiencing the whole thing? What can you say about that?
yeah, the first thing that comes to mind is I try to share with them just tools that I use for myself. So as opposed to
Sure.
saying, hey, why don't you try this? I actually show them what I do. And one of my favorite tools is no matter what I'm feeling, and it seems very simple, but as I just put a hand on my heart and I go, no matter what's going on, I'm
Yeah.
good inside. Good inside. You may have heard that term or whatever.
Mm,
And I
yes, yes.
have shared that with my kids because sometimes kids, as we all do, feelings come up and you don't know what they are. You don't know why they're
Mm,
there. It takes a
yeah,
moment to digest them and really get into it and go, all right, maybe I'm not really angry at you. Maybe I'm fearful, but I'm not going to have enough time
yeah.
with you, or you try to get to what it is. So you try to find your way through what I'd call the shadow aspect of yourself.
Yes, yes.
Try to find a way to embrace it and in a
Mm.
positive way embrace it and then possibly release it or own it as one of your
Or own
greatest
it.
strengths. Own it.
Yeah,
Yeah. Almost
yeah.
every shadow, and almost everything that we would consider a negative side of ourselves has a very positive value if you frame it properly, if you express it properly. It's not about clamping it down and then all of a sudden, boom, the explosion. It's about going, all
Mm.
right, I've got a lot of anger. For me, when I'm really mad, I mean really raging mad, what that
Yeah,
means is that there's something I really care about. And if I
yeah,
get in
yeah.
touch with the heart value of what I care about, then it transforms that anger almost on the spot, you know?
Wow, wow. And it's also opening yourself up to be a little bit vulnerable in front of your kids. And we were talking at another conference with colleagues of mine. It was a men's conference. And we were saying it's okay for fathers to cry in front of their kids and to
Uh,
seem vulnerable because we are all human beings. You agree with that?
yeah. Oh, absolutely. 100%. I have this other memory. I think I was only 6 or something. And I
Yeah,
was watching the show about Lassie, a dog that died or something. And I remember my
yeah,
mom, who was another extraordinary parent, Bonnie Cervine,
yeah,
amazing. She saw that as
yeah.
a 6-year-old, I was having all these feelings. And she put her hand on my shoulder. She goes, it's okay. It's okay to cry. And
It's
I
okay.
just burst into tears. And from that
Wow.
day on, I can cry at the drop of a hat. I burst into tears 3 times just reading your questions. I'm going,
Wow.
oh
Is it?
man, this is
Wow.
yeah. And my dad was the master of that too. He had such a big heart, and he would just show it and share it. And I thought that was such a gift. So I definitely do that with my kids too. Yeah.
And to express emotion like that and be vulnerable in front of your kids is something so powerful because you're giving them permission to also be
Yeah.
vulnerable in front of you and express themselves freely. Yes?
Absolutely. And I always try to add to whatever I'm feeling. Hey, I don't even know what this is right now. I mean, if I do, I share
Yeah.
it. But make it okay to not just have a feeling and not quite know why yet. Make it okay to
Yeah.
have that conversation. What's going on in here? You know?
What's going on?
Yeah.
I want to turn to a topic of finances. In this country, a lot of disputes between co-parents and parents that are separated, sometimes
Yeah.
it ends up in court because of maintenance issues, and there are laws about that. How have you and your co-parent navigated this thing around finances, and what kind of financial decisions that you make together, of course, in the interest of the kids? Can you maybe share successes, triumphs, and struggles in that department?
Yeah, we full disclosure, we almost went to court. We
Okay.
almost did. And then it was funny, in the building where we were having some counseling, right next to
Okay.
it was this other office where she goes, "This is more of an emotional approach. If you don't want to go to court, just come in and let's chat together."
Yeah, let's
And so,
chat. Hmm.
yeah, for me, it all came down to communication. I know it doesn't always work because, look, this is the biggest crucible in the planet when you're going through
Mm,
that separation. It's the hardest thing in the
mm,
world. But what I did, what worked for me, was to always focus on how the kids would feel. Not only how the kids would feel, not just like, oh, I'm going to be the best person in the world and to make it great for the kids. How am
yeah.
I going to feel when I'm with the kids? And that was a big change for me because it's kind of tamed some of that anger. It reframed some of the anger that I have, that I think many of us have to have going through that, into, okay, this is a deep, deep feeling that I can access and write about and process. But when I'm with my kids and when I'm with their mom, I'm going to find a way to make this go right, because that's just how powerful I am. I
Wow.
want to feel great when I'm with my kids. And that's what this is all about. And that feeds into
Wow.
communication about finances, about emotions, about schooling, about everything. It's about
Mm,
me standing up as a man. And I know it's not
yes.
always great to be a man right now,
Sure.
but as a
Yes.
man going, I'm going to make this go right. When I make a movie, I make it go right. It's my
Wow.
responsibility. There's 60 people on the set, but it's up to me. If it goes great,
Yes.
it's
Yes.
I did it.
The
And
buck
so I try to
stops with
bring that
you. Mm,
yeah. I try to bring that to my parenting. I look at this and I go, this is going to go right. Not always, but as much as
yeah.
I can, you know, I'm there, boots on the ground, going, I'm here for my kids. That's the one thing I'm certain about. I could not be more certain.
Wow.
So, what
Wow.
am I, as the director of my own life, going to do to make sure that this goes well? Is it
Wow.
perfect? No, but
Yeah,
it works.
I can
Yeah.
imagine, Scott. I can imagine with the powerful work that you do in the industry, your kids are looking up to you, and of course, taking lessons from the work that you do. I can imagine. What lessons do you think they take away from your profession, the work that you do, directing and making movies? Are there specific lessons, just life lessons, that you believe imparting in them just to become better human beings in the future?
Yeah, that's such a great question. You're such a great host. You really thought this stuff through. I'm just so, no, I'm really
Thank you.
honored to be here. This is such a great thing. There's a lot of podcasts out there, and you really put your heart and soul into this. It's beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you.
So, back to the question. Yeah, it's so funny. I think, and I'm still working on this as I'm still living, the most important thing at the end of the day may be really falling in love with yourself. And I don't mean
Wow.
that in the sort of trite kind of way it sounds, like all airy fairy, happy, happy, fall in love with yourself. I mean,
Yeah.
passionately, like a man, fall in love with yourself. And I have had some success with that. I love what I'm doing. And I try to communicate that to my kids more by showing than saying, but going, look, everybody's got a different path. It's never a competition with you and your ex. It's not.
Yes, it's
People
never.
never, and it doesn't need to be. We can all thrive. But one thing I have complete control over is my hope, my passion, my hope for what I want to become. And because, as I'm sure you've heard this phrase, one of my favorites, that hope is a choice. You
Yes,
know, you
yes.
you
Good.
decide. And so it's about that commitment to hope, commitment to my own personal passion, because I know that's going to make me a better father. It's not about me
Mm,
surrendering my kids. It's about my kids seeing me lit up on a daily basis, up at 5 because I can't wait to get to that new film project. They see that and they
mm.
take that in, and I hope that that's what they'll take with them. That idea that the passion is very important. Your passion for yourself, for your life.
Yeah, yeah. A lot of people, thanks, Scott, that is powerful. A lot of people come to our network and ask, how would we like, as fathers, how would we like our kids to emulate us, and what lessons we would like them to learn from us? And I'm thinking, if you're not present on a daily, weekly, monthly basis to your kids, who do they emulate? And both parents have a role to play. Have you found that there are things that they come to you for, and then you realize this, I think it needs a mother. It needs a motherly love, a motherly care. And then you refer them to the
Yeah.
mother, or you get your mother involved. Are there such instances where you feel this this needs a motherly attention?
Absolutely. Yeah. As you know, my friend, I just made a film called Mom's Rising, which is all about that
Yes,
mo-
yes.
mother energy and how important that is. And I absolutely, any time of the day or night, I will go, hey, let's call your mom. Hey, that's a really good thought. Let's check in with your mom about it because I feel like the best thing for those kids is to have both of our energies there.
Both of you,
And maybe
yeah.
early on, when I was a little bit wounded, a little bit angry, maybe there wasn't as much of that. But now I truly see it as a gift. It really is co parenting. It really can be a good thing and a positive thing. Now, for me, it took a
True.
little time. It didn't
Okay.
happen right away. It took me probably a couple of years. And we're like 4 years in now. And it feels really good right now. I feel like we respect each other, but it was not easy. When your heart breaks that big, you have to
Of
navigate
course.
through it and give
Yeah.
yourself time to heal. But I would say keep on it because it's not it's an asset. It's a
Yeah.
huge asset to continue to
It's a huge,
co-parent even though you're in
yeah.
separate houses. For sure.
That's
Yeah.
amazing. Talking about 4 years after separation, and I'm sure the kids have gone through their own transitional journeys. And we were talking earlier about the emotional well-being. But how have you allowed them to open up and tell you and share their frustrations and the things that they're grappling with in terms of the transition? Have you kept the door open to let them give you feedback, frustrations around this transition, and share their stories with you? How have you managed to keep that door open?
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. It's the funny thing is in our family, I grew up with three siblings and two extraordinary parents where we were probably what you'd call typical California sharers. We just
Okay.
shared everything, you know. And some
Yeah.
people would come to our house and go, you guys do this all the time. It's like, so I grew up with that. I try to encourage that with my kids. It probably drives them nuts sometimes. So I have a sense of humor about it. Oh, humor, as you probably
Yeah.
know, the most important
Yeah.
tool in your toolkit, finding a way to stay
Yeah.
light. If I can sort of be light with myself and make fun of myself, and for sure. Yeah, I just try to let them know that it's okay to have these feelings. It's okay, and I try to lead by example. And, if something's
Yeah.
up with me, I just go, wow, I'm really lost right now. I'm trying
Yeah.
to make this darn. No idea how to navigate this.
It's amazing. I mean, your story is so powerful, and your work demands of you sometimes to travel for longer periods of time. And I remember when you were here in South Africa, you were here for a couple of days, if not weeks. Those times, what happens back home? Do they move with the mom? Do you have someone else that helps you look after them while you're traveling?
Yeah, fortunately, my ex Brooke and I do very good. She travels quite a bit as well, so we kind of
As
tag
well.
team it, and we both feel
Oh,
great. I know it's not always the case, but we're fortunate in that area. I feel completely safe when it's her time, and vice versa. And then I have extraordinary family members too, two brothers right here in Santa Cruz, and their
that's
wonderful
great.
wives. So much support. Yeah, I just feel so lucky. I know everyone doesn't have that, so I feel very
Yeah.
grateful to have. If you can lean
Oh,
on
that's
family,
great.
of course.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
great. Yeah. I want to talk. We're gonna move towards a close, but there's this thing around uh, parents saying that we can't be everything to our kids as both parents. And I'm glad you're mentioning the extended family network. Do you find that relatives, family members also step in and contribute to the upbringing and raising of your kids, whether they spend time with them on weekends or you get together as a family? What role does the extended family network play for your kids?
Well, for me, absolute survival. Let me just be clear. I would not have made it through this whole thing without my family,
Wow.
my extended
Wow.
family, my brothers, their wives. I mean, they caught me so many times. And I feel
Amen.
funny saying that, to be quite honest with you, because I know everyone doesn't have that. If you do
Mm.
have that, man, lean in, cultivate it.
Learning.
I got to tell you, I heard about a guy who had no extended family and he started going to a guy's group, a dude's group,
Sure.
and they
Sure.
started doing that for each other. They cultivated a little mini family. But yeah, I would not have made it without my extended family.
Mm.
So powerful.
And
And
yeah, I see that with my own kids. I'm from a very big family. I got 4 kids, and I find that if I'm traveling and the mothers are not there, I just look to my family to step in, and that kind of community and support is so powerful. And I'm sure it works for you as well.
for sure. Yeah,
Yeah, it
absolutely.
does. And I want to talk to you about the damages of fatherlessness. And now I want you to wear a hat of a good father and the father that's thriving. Of course, we're not perfect, but now talk to the fathers out there that have, of course, maybe giving up on their parenting roles and maybe realizing that, listen, this is a struggle. I'd rather just send money, send them to best schools, send them the gifts on their birthdays, but I'll father from a distance. What are the damages that fatherlessness would cause to your kids, especially when kids are at teenage level? How would you advise fathers out there that are saying, listen, we have tried this co-parenting thing, it's not working. I'm just going to do the bare minimum of sending money and sending them to the best schools. What did you say to them?
Well, it's funny. That's a really good question. You know what my honest answer is more for the dad and more than the kids, but it'll impact the
Okay,
kids.
of
Don't
course.
miss out. I don't care how bad it seems. You can find a way. There will be a bigger reward here than you can possibly imagine. Look, I had kids later in life, and early
Sure.
as a younger man, I didn't think I'd ever have kids. But
Wow.
now that I've had them, oh my God, such a great gift. And it's not just about them, it's about us as men, as
Yeah.
fathers.
Yeah.
If it come alive in your heart, you would not believe it. And I have not seen a father yet that could not resurrect that situation with their kids, even if it's awful, even if it's non existent. You can go
Wow.
in because you know you can, because you're a strong, powerful man. Can I curse on this?
Yeah. Yeah.
You're a
Go ahead.
strong, powerful what? Yeah, you're a
Yeah.
strong, powerful motherfucker. You're a
Yeah.
man. You're a real man
Yeah.
because you're strong enough to open your heart. You know you can go in and
Yeah.
resurrect that situation with your kids, and don't miss out. It's the greatest thing in the world. It will enliven you. It will enliven them. It will make you a bigger person. It will expand your heart. It will expand your horizons. It will make you more positive as you go back out into the world. I would bet you $1 million cash. Don't miss out on it. Go after it.
Wow. That's powerful. Because as men, sometimes we don't stand up to take our space. We just think that parenting is about giving resources, is about provision. But I just think presence and presence is bigger than just provision. Because provision can
Yes.
take you to a point, especially like you and I raising daughters. Sometimes our daughters, if we were absent, our daughters will look to the men they date or marry for father roles. And the men they will date and marry may not know how to switch heads between being a partner and a father at the same time. You agree?
Yeah. Excellent point. Yeah.
That is dangerous. Okay, great. So what would you say is maybe one or two things that not necessarily that you regret, but as a single father, that you would have done differently over the past 4 years to really be the best version of yourself to your kids? Looking back now, what are one or two things that you perhaps think that you could have focused more on or maybe put more effort upon?
Boy, that's a damn good question. And I'm surprised at the answer that's coming to me, but I'll just give it to you.
Sure,
If I
go
could
for it.
go back, I would be way, way easier on myself.
Okay.
I would be way more positive with who I was. And no matter what it was, if it felt like my worst day, I'd go, okay, you're doing your best. Can you
Yeah.
do a little better tomorrow? There's something and I don't know if this is universal or not. I just know myself and a lot of other men that I've spoken to were really hard on ourselves because, as you know, my friend, it's not easy to be a man right now.
It's not.
It's
It's
that.
not.
So I would be if I was going back, I'd be way easier on myself. I would equip myself with more tools, more books, more community, more podcasts. So I was feeding myself on a daily basis. I'd be like Rocky Balboa getting ready for the fight, but instead of working out, I'd be going positive podcast, positive book, positive food. I would just be feeding
Yeah.
myself with a frenzy, a monsoon of positivity to balance out what I was going through. I think that's the
Yeah.
small thing I would do differently.
Definitely. I've been thinking of asking you this question. A lot of single moms come to our podcast and say, listen, guys, you guys are rubbish, you are useless, and you are hot and cold. The fathers
Mm.
are on the run. We are trying our best to protect our kids and then
Yeah.
try and play both roles of a father and a mother to our kids because you guys are unreliable. And by the way, because I'm angry with you, I'm not going to allow my kids to see you. What do you say to those single mothers that are saying, listen, I can do both roles simultaneously successfully? And what do you say to them? Because I know it's not possible to be a mother and father to your kids.
Yeah, I'm going to be honest with you. I don't have a good answer for that, but I do have a feeling about it because that is
Okay,
tough. That is
it's
tough
tough.
situation. All I would know in my instincts to do is to lean onto that most generous interpretation of that. I would see that woman and I would try, if I could, to step out of my anger, recognize that I've had that kind of anger many times before. And what is the most generous interpretation of that? On the surface, my angry side would go, no way, I'm not going to stand for that. But underneath, if I could take that pause, I would see a mother who cared so much about those kids that they were trying to do anything they could, even if it drove me crazy, even if I didn't think it was right. And so maybe if I approached it from that standpoint, I'd find a way in. And that's what it's all about in these things. You got to find a way
Mm,
in to the communication. You got to find a way into your path as the director of that moment. How am I going to get into that moment? It's careening off track. What am I going to do? Maybe you just stop. Maybe you just look at the
wow.
person
Wow.
for a little too
Yeah.
long and go, look, I'm really charged. You're really charged. Let's just stop. Let's find our way together.
I
Something like
love
that.
that. I love that.
The-
I love that because it's about setting emotions aside and saying, I mean, guys, in the best interest of the child or the children, let's put the emotions aside and the differences aside. What could we do for the best interest of the child? I think that's the most powerful thing to do, even if we are upset, because kids also need the mothers and they need the mothers. There are just things and issues
yeah.
that will require the mother, as we said earlier. Would you agree with that?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And
Yeah.
just that reminder,
Uh,
you do take that pause and you do sort of switch it. It is not only for the kids, it is for the kids, 100%.
it is for
But
the
it is
kids.
also
Yeah.
for us.
First of
It's
all,
also,
yes.
yeah.
What do you see in California or maybe Santa Cruz or maybe US generally? Is there a rise of these kinds of networks? And what are we learning from this phenomenon?
Well, I think there is a rise of these kind of networks, but I just want to be honest with you and out myself. I'm not in one of these, and I need to be in one. So if you
I
got
think
the room,
so.
let me know. And I think this is a common problem though, because I'm the prime person. I should be in one of those. I really need it.
You
But you
should, I
have that
think.
illusion that you're just too busy. You have that illusion that there's other things that are a bigger priority, and there just aren't. So what's wrong with me?
I think you should. There's a big rise in South Africa or in Africa. I did my research and I find that actually the fathers and the dads must take a stage and not feel bad about supporting one another because we're going through stuff. I mean, look at your profession and the amount of demand your profession throws at you, and the challenges is massive. Without the support networks and where we share stories, experiences, and how do we grow as fathers? You agree?
Boy, we so agree. And I think just now I just had this thought. Thank you for bringing it to me or inspiring it to me. I had
Sure.
this thought that I always put my kids first. Maybe by me going to that group, that is putting my kids first. Don't you think?
Yeah,
Wouldn't you? If I would just
absolutely.
and go to one of those groups, it would be the best thing for my kids. So thank you for that realization.
Yeah. And we need to keep our networks open because we want to learn from your experiences from the US side or California specifically and see how we can learn from your experiences and the work that you're doing in society and vice versa. You can learn from us as well. And I'm hoping when you are back in South Africa again, we can invite you to our studios and then you
Love
can
to.
share your experiences one more time in person. And that would be great. The last question I was going to ask you is this. Looking back on your journey so far, what did you say is the most important lesson you've learned about parenting as a single dad? And how has it shaped your approach to raising your kids?
Without a doubt, I'm surprised this is coming to me, but I'll just say it.
Sure.
Without a doubt, finding a way to keep your heart open.
Yeah.
And not only because it's the right thing to do, but because it is the most powerful choice you have. You will
Yeah.
impact your kids, you will impact yourself. Finding a way, and there is a way, because my first response when I'm in the crucible, there's no way. I'm just so angry right now, I just can't. But there is. And we know that there is, right? Because we're strong.
You're
So
strong.
finding a way
Yeah.
to keep your heart open, whatever that tool is, it's probably going to your group, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
One of your
No,
schools.
thank you so much, Scott. This has been heartwarming, and I'm so excited. I just wish we had 2 hours together. Like I said,
Yeah.
we're gonna continue to collaborate, to share experiences, and I'd like you when you're back in the country again. I'd like to have some time with you to tell us more about how this navigation of fatherhood and parenting is for you, and maybe we can get other single dads around the table and share stories as well. And your parting shot for you and your closing remarks, please.
Oh, closing remarks. All
Yes.
I say is more power to us, my friend. I mean, single dads, I honestly had this thought last night. I wish I had had time to get a shirt that said SD, which could stand for either.
SD, yes.
Or
Yeah,
I wanted to come on and go, because it sounds funny to say, but I believe it does. I think men, real men, are so great. And I'm coming out of an era where it was a little bit tough to be a man. I think where it's time to reclaim that masculine energy, but the real heart-based masculine energy. That's where it's at, man.
that's
That's
where
where
it's
it's at.
at.
I just want to
Absolutely.
leave you with this. I'm rooting for us. I think the world
Wow,
needs us. So
it
let's
does.
be kind to ourselves. Let's remember good inside. No matter what's going on, good inside. So let it be written. So let it be done.
Thank you
Good
so
inside.
much. I love this. Oh, by the way, show that cup. I saw an interesting cup that you were using for coffee or tea just now. Is it
Oh,
still there?
yeah. I just happen to have a mug with me.
I love it. Best date ever. I love it. All the best, Scott, and I hope we hook up again when you're
Yeah.
back in the country. I look forward for us to hooking up. We should have coffee. I'm gonna get some dates around the table, and then we have a tea or something, and then courtesy of Single Dads Network in South Africa. For those of you that are following our network, please keep tuned in for more stories to come because we're gonna bring more Single Dads on season 5 as we commemorate one first anniversary of Single Dads since our inception. Scott, all the best, my brother. Hope
Yeah,
we talk
great
to
to
you
see you.
soon.